All right, welcome in everybody. We're back again. Big Ant Fantasy Football here to talk some ball today. Uh, Kind of the reverse of last Thursday. We went from having a very exciting, fun matchup with the Cowboys and the Lions, a lot of playoff implications on the line, to now we got Falcons Bucks today. Two teams that are on the skid. We're going to talk about that game today. Answer any questions that come through in the chat throughout the stream. So make sure to ask those. I'll get to those questions after we talk through our game preview. Probably won't go super long today, but just want to talk through this game a little bit. And I got three best bets for this game that I'm putting into a slip. And I'll talk about each and every one of those best bets at the end of the stream. So stay tuned for that. What up, Frizzle? Good to see you, bro. Make sure to ask any questions you got. I'm going to get to questions at the end of the stream after I talk through this game a little bit. So first and foremost, Falcons Bucks, as you see here, over-unders at 43.5 points. Tampa Bay is now at 5.5 points. Originally, I believe this was at 4.5, but bettors were hitting the Bucks a little bit, so that line has pushed to 5.5 now. As you can see here, majority of the public is betting the Bucks. You see 85% of the money, 84% of the bets on the Bucks, and then on the spread, 72% of the bets, 75% of the money. Instant kind of gut reaction to the side in this one. I lean Bucks just because this is really a must-win game for them. If they lose, that could be detrimental to their playoff chances. So I want to say Bucks just because of that, but I'll get into some statistics as we go on that are kind of leaning me a bit towards the Falcons. But let's get into it. We'll look at our next slide, which is the injury report. Major injuries on the Falcons side. Obviously, we know they've been without Michael Penix. They're still without Drake London in this one. Kyle Pitts is questionable, but does seem like he is going to play. And then Jalen Walker, rookie defensive end, is also questionable. For the Bucks, they're remotely healthy. Cade Otton is the only relatively new injury. He's doubtful, but I just listed him as out. And then questionable, we got Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan both coming back. So getting healthy in the past game. Obviously, losing Otton hurts a little bit, but I think they'd be happy to sacrifice Mike Evans for Cade Otton any day. So interesting to see how this plays out for Tampa Bay's pass catchers. I'm expecting Emeka Egbuka to see a little bit of a bump. Just because now that Mike Evans is back, he's not going to get relegated to just that X receiver role that he's been having to play with Mike Evans out. So I'm excited to see what this means for Egbuka in games with Mike Evans. He's gone over 50 receiving yards in 3 of the 4 games. So I like this spot for Egbuka for a bounce back. Let's get more into some of the numbers on today's game. So this is just kind of some notable info and trends, storylines going on with both teams. We have both teams struggling. They're both 1-4 in their last 5 games, and really losing games that they shouldn't. If you're looking at the Tampa Bay, they're just coming off an atrocious loss to the Saints, who I had Tampa in my survivor pool, and they did not come through for me. So I was super bummed about that. Made it all the way to week 14. And they didn't come through to me. So I have a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth about these Bucks. But yeah, neither of these teams are playing very well. Falcons are also playing awful and just got embarrassed at home against the Seahawks, who are a very good team, but just embarrassing performance for the Falcons. Looking at some head-to-head data, Kirk Cousins has actually played very well against Todd Bowles, and defense is coached by him. In his last 3 appearances against Todd Bowles, he's thrown for at least 275 yards, 2 touchdowns in each 3 games. And in 1 game last year, he threw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. So that is something to keep in mind if we're thinking about looking at maybe a potential Kirk Cousins under. I don't know if I would do it. I don't know if I necessarily want to back Kirk Cousins and bet any overs, but just something to kind of keep in mind that he typically sees this blitz-heavy defense pretty well. He has a history against Todd Bowles, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Kirk have a decent game. If you look at the other matchups he's had since he's taken over for Penix, this, I believe, is the easiest matchup on paper for him to this point. So wouldn't be surprised to see a decent spot from Kirk Cousins. Just kind of talked about the blitz-heavy defense the Bucs run. The Falcons are also very blitz-heavy. They're currently third in blitz rate, while the Bucs are seventh. And then I pulled up some data on Baker Mayfield, and out of 20 qualified quarterbacks with 100 snaps, Baker is 17th of the 20 in QB EPA versus the blitz. So just not seeing the blitz too well, struggling a little bit. And when he does get blitzed, he has the second highest scramble percentage of those 20 quarterbacks. So I'll get sneak peek. I might get into that with my best bets, but Baker might see some scrambles from him today. If he gets the pressure, I wouldn't be surprised to see him step up. We know he can avoid sacks and maybe break off a chunk play. With the Atlanta blitz rate, one thing I did notice is that despite a relatively high blitz rate, their pressure and sack rates are around league average to below league average. So despite blitzing a lot, they're still not creating a whole bunch of pressure, which I think fares well for Baker in this potential rush yards prop. And then looking at when these two teams matched up in week 1, the Bucs ultimately won this game 23-20. Baker went for 167 yards, 3 touchdowns, 39 rush yards. So not a lot of yards, but was able to convert to touchdowns. Egbuka went 4 for 67 and 2 touchdowns. And then Bijan only 20 rush yards, did have 100 receiving yards and a touchdown. And then Mike Evans with a calm little 5 for 51. Just kind of some of the notable stat lines. I think Bucky Irving had a relatively quiet game last time against them. He had about 30 rush yards, but he scored a receiving touchdown to save his day. But that was all the kind of notable performances. Let's get into some defensive metrics. We are a fantasy football channel, right? We care about offense. We care about the potential to score fantasy points. Let's see how these defenses are doing. First, we're going to start with Atlanta. And as you can see, kind of all over the board here. So with the way to interpret this chart is that any of the greens are what Atlanta is doing well against, yellow is about middle of the pack, and then red is where they're struggling. So let's first highlight where they're doing well. They're limiting quarterback pass yards, right? Only allowing 191.5 yards per game to quarterbacks. And we kind of saw that when these teams matched up in week 1. Baker had a relatively quiet day from a yardage standpoint, only about 160 yards. So maybe a Baker Mayfield passing yards under could be in play. Don't know if I'll necessarily pull the trigger on that, but just something that the year-long data is telling us to maybe take a look at. And like I just pointed out, they're struggling with QB rush yards, 29th in rush yards allowed to the quarterback position per game, allowing 23.5. We look at running backs. They're below average, about slightly below average in almost every category, right? 20th in rush yards, 16th in touchdowns, 19 in receiving yards. I do think this is a pretty decent spot for the Tampa Bay run game and Bucky Irving in particular. I am interested in a Bucky Irving touchdown. I know is at plus money. Not one of my best bets, but just something I was keeping an eye on for sure. And I think Rachaad White's lines were really low when I first looked at them. So as much as you guys on this channel probably know, not the biggest Rachaad White fan, but if we're going to Rachaad White 17.5 rush yards, we might have to take that, especially with Tampa Bay favored to win in this game. I could see a good day for Rachaad White. Looking at wide receivers or how they fare against wide receivers, about middle of the pack in receptions, yards, but they're giving up touchdowns. And this is kind of goes exactly with what Baker did against them in week 1, right? Only less than 200 passing yards, but 3 touchdowns. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. Maybe a Mike Evans touchdown, maybe a Emeka Egbuka touchdown is in play. Yardage, it's about middle of the pack, but they have been giving up more yardage as of late. looking at the numbers, the last couple games, they're becoming more of a pass funnel than the beginning of the year, where they were actually doing pretty well against wide receivers. And then I also pulled up the fantasy points given up per position, which is kind of an interesting one. So on the season, about middle of the pack to every position besides tight end. But then when we pull it to on the road, they're very good against every position besides running backs. Now, I think this is a little bit skewed just because they've played in blowouts on the road, right? So when you're playing in blowouts, typically we're going to see running backs get more volume. They're going to score more touchdowns. They're going to score more fantasy points. So I do think that is kind of what's skewing this chart. But like I said, this Atlanta rush defense isn't something I'm super worried about. And I think Tampa Bay will be able to handle them up front. Tampa Bay does like to run a lot of man gap schemes rather than zone. And that is what Atlanta is also struggling against on the year. They're having a harder time stopping man gap schemes versus zone. So that part does fare well for the Bucks. I do think they'll be able to run on them. But maybe in the red zone, we'll see some more airing it out based off what these numbers are telling us. Let's get into the Bucks defense. I see you guys are asking questions in the chat. I'm going to get to all these questions after I got these defensive breakdown for Tampa Bay. Then I got 3 best bets. And then I'll get to all your guys' questions in the chat. Let me know what you guys are thinking, what these stats are telling you. Let me know what you're betting today. So talking about defense, we got Tampa Bay, who, as you can see here, a lot of red on the screen. They're struggling with QB passing yards. They're struggling with QB rush yards. They're struggling with running back receiving yards. They're struggling with wide receiver receptions and yards. So what this data tells you and what we've kind of known about Tampa all year is they're just a massive passing funnel, right? They're allowing running backs to convert, score touchdowns against them, but they're pretty stout on between the tackles running, right? A lot of the big running back performances that we've seen against them from a fantasy standpoint are pretty inflated by touchdowns, receiving game work, and like explosive runs to the outside. What Tampa does a good job of is they're very stout on the runs in between the tackles, right? It's kind of the Vita Vea effect. Now, he's just one component of their defense, but he's one of the most dominant nose tackles in the league and just kind of plugs 2 gaps right up the middle. So teams have a real tough time running between the tackles against this Tampa Bay defense. But when they get in the red zone, teams are not having trouble converting. And that is reflective with these statistics. As you see here, they're top 10 in rush yards given up, but they're also top 10 in wide receiver touchdowns giving up. So they're doing a good job of forcing teams to throw the ball once they get in the red zone, but then once they get in the red zone, they're pounding it and able to convert against them. So what these numbers are telling me is that this is a decent spot for Atlanta pass catchers. Now, we know there's no Drake London. We know that Darnell Mooney has been very underwhelming this year. Who is this work going to go to? We've seen Kyle Pitts take a significant step, but is Kirk Cousins going to be able to get him the ball? We looked at the statistics Kirk Cousins has against Todd Bowles' coach defense, right? He might do well against them, but I don't know. It's a big unknown to me, right? This Tampa Bay secondary is kind of their weakness. They do have one good player in the secondary, Jamal Dean. They have Antoine Winfield, too, at safety, obviously, who are both very good players. But they are a big pass funnel right now. So it's kind of an interesting thing where neither side, I think, is the most powerful unit. Talking about Atlanta passing game, talking about this Bucs secondary. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. If I had to guess, I think Kyle Pitts is interesting. We'll talk about my best bets. I do have something with Kyle Pitts in there. And I think Bijan receiving yards is very interesting too. As you can see here, the Bucs are 32nd in running back receiving yards allowed. Bijan did go for 100 receiving yards in their matchup against them week 1. So it could be a nice spot for Bijan receiving. Maybe Darnell Mooney's worth a look, but not something I would personally do. I think I'd only want to play it through Bijan or Kyle Pitts. But that is going to wrap up the defensive defensive breakdowns. Now let's get into the best bets. I got 3 props, parlaying them together at the end. We'll start with the first one. I got Baker Mayfield over 14.5 rush yards. He's easily cleared this in each of the last 4 games. He's had 19 or more in all 4 of those games. He's had 39 plus rush yards in 2 of them. And when these teams met in week 1, he had 39 rush yards against them. And as we talked about on the season, the Falcons are really struggling against quarterback runs. They're 29th in rush yards given up. And they blitz at a high rate, and Baker scrambles at a high rate when he's blitzed. So a lot of signs are pointing at Baker getting a couple scrambles today. He's been running more as of late. We know how important this game is to him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him tuck a couple runs. I like this 14.5 number for him. Second best bet, we got Kyle Pitts over 19.5 longest reception. Now, we talk about this Arizona pass game being depleted without Drake London, but Kyle Pitts has been the main benefactor of that. He's been over this longest reception mark in 6 of his last 7 games. And in each of the last 4 games Drake London has missed, he has hit this line. He's being used a lot downfield. He's had 3 catches of 20-plus yards last week, and he's had an increased target share in those games without Drake London. I think with this longest reception, we only need 1, right? And I think he's able to get past the defense at least once tonight, break off at least 1 long gain. We know, like we said, Tampa Bay has been very susceptible to the pass. They blitz at a high rate. I think Kirk Cousins is able to find Kyle Pitts for at least one point throughout this game. Third prop, Tyler Algier under 10.5 longest rush. As I was talking about with the defensive analysis, we know Tampa Bay is great against inside runs, between the tackle runs, 7th in overall rush yards allowed. And Tyler Algier, that's all he does, right? Tyler Algier is not a guy the Falcons are going to be trying to get out in space, get out on outside zone sort of runs. They're not going to be trying to get him on jet sweeps. Tyler Algier's between the tackles slammer, and that's what Tampa Bay is best against. In the 3 head-to-head matchups against them, he was under in all 3 with longest runs of 8, 9, and 5. Talking about this 10.5 number, he's at 9.5 on other sites. So I like taking the under on this 10.5, getting some good value there. I just don't see him breaking off an explosive run today. So that's going to wrap up the 3 best bets. As you can see here, got them together on a slip for 4.4x. Make sure, if you guys are tailing, bet responsibly, but these are some of my favorite looks. I think you're also viable to take out Tyler Algier and just run Kyle Pitts and Baker Mayfield. I think that is a nice little 2-leg parlay you can do. And then some other interesting props that didn't quite make it that I was also looking at were Bijan receiving yards, who I like the spot, but the number felt a little high. It felt like the market was pretty sharp with the numbers. So I would maybe alt Bijan down a little bit if I take his receiving yards. I think his rush yards under is also kind of interesting. But other than that, I think that's all I would really look to play. I think a Baker Mayfield rush yards ladder bet could be interesting, like maybe alting him to 24.5, 29.5, seeing if you could get some nice payouts with that. And then I have some other plays I've sent to the Discord as well. But that is going to wrap up the game preview. Now let's get to the questions you guys got in the chat. Good to see y'all in here. What up, Frizzle? What up, Mando? Start 2 running back, 1 flex, Chuba Hubbard, Travion Henderson, Bam Knight, Woody Marks, Bucky. I also have Michael Wilson. Okay, so immediately I'm playing Bucky. We talked about liking this spot. I'm also playing Henderson against the Bills, and I'm playing Woody Marks. I think you got to roll Travion Henderson, Woody Marks, Bucky. I could be talked into Michael Wilson over Woody Marks, but I just don't love the spot against the Texans. When I talked about my start sits earlier in the week, Michael Wilson was one of my sits, and Woody Marks was one of my starts. So I'm going to stick with that take and tell you Travion Henderson, Woody, Bucky. Damn, Danny. Faded 2 guys I like tonight. Frizzle said, Boutte, Watson, or Coker? I think I would go Watson still. I know it's a tough matchup on paper, but I think they're going to have to use Watson's. They're going to have to try to use him downfield. I think we could see some deep shots to him. Denver's stout, but they are giving up some yards. I don't love either of those 2 other guys enough to bench Christian Watson with what he's been giving you. What Wilson are you talking about, Frizzle? Oh, Emmanuel Wilson? Denver's pretty good against the run. I think Emmanuel Wilson's just kind of still in that handcuff range for me. He doesn't really have any standalone value. Same as like kind of Blake Corum. I hope not. I actually kind of like Danny, no offense, dude, but I think I'm the opposite of all 3 of these legs. I was just talking about like Bijan rush yards under. He's under like 30 yards in the 3 last head-to-head games. Just really hard to pull the trigger on a Bijan under, so I ultimately didn't do that. I like Bucky to run the ball. I'm more a fan of the Pitt's longest reception than the yards in receptions, I will say. What up, Frosty? I think Godwin will still be involved. I more so think it's going to be I think Mike Evans coming back helps Egbuka the most of anyone in this offense. I think Egbuka can get some more slot opportunities. He can get some more looks at moving Z. I think Godwin will be okay, especially without Cade Otton. I think Godwin will still get a lot of those kind of low ADOT, like security sort of blanket catches because there's no Cade Otton, and that's kind of what he does. So I think Godwin will be okay. I think this is a decent spot for him, but to be honest, this is one that I kind of just want to see how it plays out this week. I don't really have a super definitive answer. Give me Dart. I'm going Dart. And then Jalen Warren, Pittman, Rico, BTJ, Watson. Oof. I think I'm playing Rico for sure against the Saints. Pittman's tough. Probably staying away just because if it's Phillip Rivers starting, who knows what that's going to look like? And if it's not Phillip Rivers, still who knows what it's going to look like? So I don't know if you could play Pittman at this point. Bucky. Let me see who they play. I mean, not Bucky. Jalen Warren. I'm drawing a blank on who the Steelers play this week. One second, guys. Sorry about that. All right, I got all the matchups here in front of me, so I don't forget. The Steelers have the Dolphins, who have actually been heavily improving against running backs, but I still think that's a decent spot for Warren. BTJ is really hard to trust right now. Is an okay spot for him against the Jets. I'm between BTJ and Christian Watson. On paper, this is a lot better of a spot for BTJ than it is for Christian Watson. But it's just really hard to trust BTJ in your fantasy playoffs considering what Christian Watson has given you. You know what? I'm going to say BTJ, but that feels crazy. I don't know. This is a hard one. I'm for sure Jalen Warren, Rico, but BTJ Watson I'm going back and forth on. Go. Who are you leaning towards, Frosty? Let me know. Let me know in the other people in here what you guys think, BTJ or Watson this week. We got BTJ against the Jets, Christian Watson against the Broncos. What are we thinking? I would drop Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson's fine to drop. And Give me the Bears. Yeah, Luca, Dylan Harper has been balling. I had him in a slip last night, and he came through for us in the premium Discord. Hell yeah. What up, Connor? One wide receiver, one tight end, one flex. Mike Evans, Ladd, Likely, Theo Johnson, Tyrone, Chris Rodriguez. At tight end, give me my boy, Isaiah Likely. Trust him the most of those guys. And then wide receiver... Sorry, I'm thinking about this one. This is not easy. I think I'd go Mike. I think I'm Likely Mike. And I think I would pull the... it's just hard to trust Chargers pass catchers right now with the state of their offensive line. And in Kansas City, I think Chris Rodriguez has a decent spot, but he needs to score a touchdown for him to be any sort of fantasy viable. Yeah, give me Ladd. Give me Mike Evans, give me Ladd, and give me Isaiah Likely. And that's what I would roll with. I could be convinced about Chris Rodriguez over Ladd, though. But that's the only other option I would be considering. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Frosty. I'm worried about the decent spot for Watson, but it's also hard to trust BTJ. And playing the Jets, that game does have extreme blowout potential. So it's hard. I will say the game script in that Green Bay game may be a little more fun. It'll be a competitive game. That's what I'm saying. They might just run all over them with ETN. And that's the other thing too, Frizzle. Like, I don't know if Surtain's shadowing Watson. Like, I know Watson's been good, but I don't know if the Broncos are just like, yeah, we need to keep Surtain on that guy. I don't know. That's one of those ones where you don't know what the defensive game plan is until the game starts, right? So it's hard to play the guessing game. But I think I would prefer Watson, BTJ in a nutshell, just because of what they've been giving you these last couple weeks. I would feel a lot better about the way I'm thinking about it is if I have BTJ on my bench and he goes off, I mean, whatever, dude. Like, he's been a bum all year for me. If Christian Watson goes off on my bench, I'll kicking myself for not starting him. I'm like, damn, all the signs were there that he was doing well, and I benched him, and look what he did. I know it's a tough matchup. I have a harder time benching the guy who's been played better. Give me Christian Watson. Final answer. You did draft him to play him, but he didn't want to be played this year based off what he's given you. I know it's tough. It is the Jets. Maybe it's the week BTJ catches a bomb. I think give me Watson, though. Give me Watson is my final answer. Usually you got to trust your gut. My first gut instinct was telling me go Watson. I'm going to stick to it. Roll with Watson. All right, y'all. If you guys have any other last-minute questions, ask them in the chat. I'll get to them before we get out of here. Just a pretty quick stream today. Okay. If that's your thought, if that's how you feel, then play BTJ. All right, y'all. As you can see here, this is the slip for tonight. Tyler Algier under 10.5 longest rush. Kyle Pitts over 19.5 longest reception. Baker Mayfield 15 rush yards. That's what we're rocking with today. We got more picks in the Discord. Make sure to join that. It's 100% free to join. Appreciate everyone that's in there. Always in there talking fantasy, talking football, talking basketball, you name it. I'm going to get out of here. Appreciate y'all that tuned in. Make sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and I'll see you guys in the next one. If you got any more questions, join the Discord, ask them in there, and I'll answer you guys before the game kicks off. All right. I'll see you guys next time. Peace. Good luck tonight, everybody.